The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Market Fantasy. Get up to 1K in a deposit match with some Market Fantasy with the promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Game Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Monday morning, August 4th, around 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the breakdown of the quarterfinals here in Toronto. It's been a while. Good to see all of you. Said many times on the show in the past that the North American tennis tournaments are pretty tough to actually record episodes for because the matches end so late. Then they start early in the morning, and because of that, it's tough to find an actual opportunity to record with lines in every match. So we kind of had to go AWOL for a bit, but we are back for the quarters because we have no day matches. We have the quarterfinals broken down into Monday and Tuesday. First match is 7 p.m. tonight, so we do have some time, and once again, we're here for a show. So before we get into the actual breakdown of the quarters, before we get into the recap of what happened on Sunday, a reminder, first of all, that you can help support the show by like, subscribing to YouTube. A reminder, the podcast is also available on Spotify and Apple. So if you want the podcast in video format as well with the live stream component, check out the YouTube channel, SGPN Tennis Gambling Podcast. If you want the audio version only, post-edit, you can find it on Spotify and Apple, SGPN Tennis Gambling Podcast. Once again, if you're checking out either way, subscribe and like on YouTube, and don't forget to leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great tennis merch. We have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have mugs, different colors, very affordable, very comfortable. Check out all the merchandise that we have on the merch store, not just for this show, but for the other shows with the network as well. Plus, a reminder, the Sports Game Podcast is back with the NFL previews, because if you didn't look at the calendar, preseason actually already started technically with the Hall of Fame game. You have spring training, you have preseason, which is going to be starting over the next week for the other teams. But the NFL season is very close to starting. It's closer than you think. And a reminder, if you want some NFL team previews, check out the Sports Game Podcast for a preview on every team. And a reminder, they're bringing back the phrase that pays. Each episode, they'll give out a word of a 32-word phrase. Submit the phrase for a chance to win a $1,000 circa future. Anyway, getting into the recap of what happened in the last episode. For the lock and dog, ended up splitting. Pretty annoying loss with the lock. I feel like it was the right side. It just didn't get there. We had Mensik team total over 12.5 games, minus 110 against Boyer. Boyer needed to hold one more time in each set, and he choked it. On top of that, I believe he went 0 for 7 on breakpoint chances. Mensik winning 6-4, 6-4. Was honestly a heartbreaker because I believe it was 4-4 in both sets, and then Boyer got broken the one time we needed him to hold again. But 0 for 7 on breakpoint chances as well. Boyer could have won a set in that match, and either way, Mensik did end up winning 2 comfortably in the end on the scoreboard. It was not that easy, I'll put it that way. Bit of a heartbreaker there for the lock. As for the dog, though, nice and easy. We had Opelka and Makic first set over 10.5 games at plus 25. Each of the first 2 sets did not feature a tie break. Each of the first 2 sets did not feature a break, as each set went to a breaker. I give that on YouTube. That was plus 850 for each of the first 2 sets on, once again, a tie break type of prop or parlay special, whatever you want to call it. So either way, that was plus 850. Nice win there if you follow me on Twitter. But nice win for the dog. Never in doubt, as you saw each player hold for the first hour and a half, 2 hours of that match. Anyway, time to get into the recap of Sunday's matches. I was going to recap more of the tournament, but to be honest, that would take too long. And I know a lot of you want to get into the matches for Monday and Tuesday. So instead, we're just going to recap what happened on Sunday. A lot of content because we had a bunch of competitive matchups, 4 matches, and every single matchup did not end in straight sets. So de Minaur ended up beating Tiafoe in 3. You could argue that he should have won in straight sets because he was up a break twice to begin the second set. However, he eventually fell apart. Tiafoe won the set, and then eventually de Minaur got the job done, breaking towards the end of the third set, and then eventually held to win. So nice win for de Minaur. I know that he was decent favorite, minus 350. Got the job done. Wasn't easy, but de Minaur's been in great form. He was pretty fortunate, though, with the draw because O'Connell dropped out, who's always injured, and de Minaur got to get an extra day or 2 of rest, which he might have needed after winning the DC title. But he's been in great form after complaining. about the schedule and the ATP level and the potential overworking. He's bounced back. He won in DC. He ended up winning the first couple rounds here, and he looks very good. We'll see how he looks against Shelton in the next round. But nice win, though, in 3 for him. Tiafoe, it felt like, had a classic, I'd say, brain fart moment there, where he was basically facing break point and said, you know what, let me try a drop shot. Yeah, okay. Good luck with that against de Minaur. And then de Minaur, of course, hit the passing shot. He got the break. But yeah, drop shot against de Minaur is probably not the shot you want to go with, and that's what he went with. So Tiafoe ended up losing to de Minaur. Not going to roast Tiafoe too hard, though, because he was a massive underdog in the matchup, but nice job at de Minaur to get the job done. You saw Rublev win a weird match against Fokina, because Rublev was incredible serving the entire match, and yet he still went down a break, or he still went down a set, because Fokina was able to outlast him in a tiebreak in the first set. Rublev had a bunch of chances, at least to, I'd say, put a stranglehold on the match, and instead he just kept blowing opportunities. Felt like Fokina had to battle in almost every service game where Rublev was kind of coasting. And either way, point is Fokina won the first set. He also had a chance to potentially win the match in straight sets, as Fokina did have a love 30 chance in the 4-5 return game. So he could have potentially won. He was 2 points away from winning. Rublev ended up fighting it off, and then eventually Rublev won the breaker. Then he broke Fokina, he held again, and Fokina said, I am out of here, and he left. So Fokina had a pretty decent chance of winning. To be honest, Rublev was outplaying him the entire match, and it felt like Fokina was pretty fortunate to win a set in the first place, because Rublev was just serving bombs. You look at the return points, I'd say Fokina spent significantly more time serving than Rublev did. A lot of very straightforward holds for Rublev, and I cannot say the same about Fokina, and then Rublev eventually got the job done as Fokina retired halfway through the third set. For the actual stats to back it up, the first serve points, Fokina won 68%. Rublev won 90% of his first serve points, did not get broken in the entire match. So Rublev served very well, and he got the job done there in 2.5 sets. Then you had the full amount of drama that we ended up seeing at night, as you saw Shelton beat Cobolli in a final set breaker. Cobolli choked, no way around it. He was up 5-3 in the third set. You figure Shelton, not a great returner. He's probably dead. Not so fast. Cobolli blinked, and eventually he got broken. He fought off one break point, got broken, and then eventually he ended up losing in a breaker. They had an altercation, or at least a form of dialogue at the net. Do I care what they were talking about? No. It felt like Cobolli was kind of just ranting because he choked and he was mad and he wanted to express his frustration. But at the end of the day, he choked. Nothing else to add. Nice comeback by Shelton. Shelton, at the end of the day, is a very good tiebreak player, and he's proven it over the years, and Cobolli never stood a chance in that tiebreak. He went down 2 mini breaks immediately. He was down immediately, basically 4-1, and it felt like he kind of mentally checked out after that, as Shelton won 7-1 in the breaker. But either way, Cobolli played well, served for the match. He choked it, and nice job by Shelton to not roll over and to come back and win a pretty entertaining 3-set thriller. Then you had the late match between Leheshka and Fritz, and Leheshka ended up falling apart in the breaker there. It was a matchup that featured 0 breaks in the entire match. Both players combined to go 0 for 14 on breakpoint chances. Both guys serve very well, though. Leheshka won 81% of his first serve points, 60% of his second serve points, and Fritz won 82% of his first serve points, 57% of his second serve points. Felt like Leheshka was the slightly better player the entire match, but it was really close because both guys couldn't break to save their lives. Fritz, though, is objectively the better tiebreak player, and he looked like it in the late stages of the third set. I'm not going to say Leheshka choked, but he was up a mini break. He was up 4-2 in the breaker. And then Fritz did very well, as Fritz ended up winning 5 of the last 6 points in the breaker. But either way, a point is Fritz got the job done. Nice job by him. As for us, bit of a painful loss. We had Leheshka to win the event at 28-1, and he was up a mini break in the third set, and he fell short. So, fun matchup. If you stayed up to watch it, there were no breaks at all, so it felt like it was kind of watching two serve bots go at it, but it was entertaining. First got the job done, and like Shelton, you saw the Americans advance courtesy of a final set breaker. So once again, a pretty fun collection of matches for Sunday. Hopefully the matches on Monday and Tuesday live up to the same hype. But we'll move on to the matches taking place in the quarters for Toronto. Now, before we get into any of the matches for the quarters, a reminder that we're brought to you by Nordic Fantasy because doing Best Mania happening all summer long. They're giving away 15 million in prizes, 2 minutes first place. No waiver wire, no arguments about trades. Best way to play fantasy football. They're also doing pick'em entries if you want to try that out for Underdog. And for pick'em, you go in up to 500 times your entry. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to get a special pick first time with an offer up to 1K in bonus cash. Arctic Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by MyBookie because they're available a ton of locations. You can to bet on baseball, to bet on WNBA, to bet on golf, to bet on, of course, football futures and tennis. You can also use a ton of locations. Use crypto for fast payouts and use deposit Santo for an account. Use the code SGPN to get a special 100% doesn't match up to 1K. Terms and conditions MyBookie the G promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish recapping what happened yesterday. Time to move on into the matchups taking place in the quarters for Toronto. So once again, we have 2 matches on Monday, 2 matches on Tuesday. Starting off with the first matchup, US Zverev against defending champion Popyrin. For this one, US Zverev at minus 340, who ended up winning after Cerundolo retired midway through the last match. Popyrin, though, has been very good after beating Rune in 3 sets. He's about plus 270, give or take. For the spread, minus 3.5 for Zverev, plus 3.5 for Popyrin. The over-under is at 22.5 or 23.5. For the actual set spread, US Zverev in straight sets at minus 115. You have Popyrin to win a set at minus 115 as well. The over 2.5 sets is plus 128. So for that, Ted, it's been one-way traffic in favor of Zverev. He's currently 3-0 lifetime against Popyrin. For the meetings, you've seen Popyrin never win a set against him. So they faced off in a couple of hardcourt matchups in 2018-2019. So very dated. Faced off last year, though, in the Olympics on clay. We know that Popyrin's decent on clay, not amazing. He's definitely better on hardcourt, even though he did win a title in Umag on clay a couple years ago. But Zverev has won every meeting in straight sets. For the path, Zverev won via retirement against Cerundolo after winning the first set. He ended up beating Arnaldi in 3, and he beat Walton in a competitive straight set battle. For Popyrin, he has been looking good but vulnerable. Beat Rune in 3, beat Medvedev in 3, and beat Arsenault in straight sets. So, against good competition, even though we know Rune and Medvedev are head cases, Popyrin has dropped a set, but he has been able to survive and come back. In fact, he dropped the first set in each of those 2 matchups. Zverev, though, has been good, but Zverev never makes it easy, and it feels like Zverev's lack of aggression and his willingness to just sit there behind the baseline does give him some chances to lose sets if Popyrin does have this firepower going, the serve is on, the forehand's on, and even the volleying can be on display. I think there is a path for Popyrin to win a set here. Do I think he's going to win the match? I'm going to say no. I know he's defending champion. I get that he is very good on the courts here in Canada, but I do think Zverev should be favored. I think the price makes sense. You could argue that's a bit expensive. I'd say Zverev should be minus 250 instead of minus 340. Do I think he's going to win? Yes. Do I think straight sets is a guarantee? I'm going to say no. I think that Popyrin can win a set here. I do think that Zverev showed that he's vulnerable, and I do think that Popyrin can jump on the opportunity. So instead of going for the money line or for the spread here, I don't mind the over at 22.5 games. I think that you can see a breaker in here. You could see potentially a 6-4 included. So even a straight set win for Zverev, you still end up getting the over for the matchup. I don't maybe mind the Popyrin spread plus 3.5 if you think that he keeps 1 set very close. I think Zverev will win. I think he's a better rallier than Popyrin, but I do think the serve can be questionable, and the shot selection, the lack of aggression for Zverev, which has been his undoing over the course of Grand Slam events, could be an issue here in this matchup because I know Popyrin does have the firepower to capitalize. Zverev's not going to take chances. So for me, I'm going to go with Popyrin plus the games. I think Zverev wins, but I really think that this line's kind of disrespectful to the defending champion as Zverev's minus 340. For value, I'll go with Popyrin, and I'll go with the over. Well, I bet this, no guarantee, to be honest. I'm not really interested in this matchup, but I think that for the value alone, I think Zverev is overpriced for this matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Khachanov against Mickelson, a rematch of the Australian Open where Mickelson killed him, but Khachanov's the favorite at minus 205. You have Mickelson at around 172 as the dog. For the spread, minus 2.5 for Khachanov. You have a plus 2.5 for Mickelson. The over-under is also around 22.5 or 23.5. Now, for the set spread, Khachanov to win in straight sets is around plus 132. Mickelson to win a set is minus 170. Mickelson to win in straight sets is plus 390. The over 2.5 sets is around plus 125. Now, I said before, face off in the Australian Open, and you saw Mickelson destroy him, as Mickelson won in straight sets, actually. Now, Khachanov was in bad form, and it seems like he's starting to figure it out again, as he's still in the quarterfinals here in Toronto. And they're beating Fikovic, beat Nava in 3, and beat Ruud in straight sets. Last round, Mickelson had a nice win against Tien, had a nice 3-set win against Musetti, and he ended up beating Barrios Vera in straight sets. So he's been fine. You could argue competition's been a bit weak. Tien, I know, is a good hardcore player. We saw that in the Australian Open. Still, a pretty good draw for him having Tien in the round of 16. But Mickelson's been looking good. The serve can still be underwhelming, but he's been looking sharp here on the courts in Toronto. Khachanov, though, is objectively the better hardcore player, despite what we saw in Australia a couple months ago. Khachanov, though, I think it's looked good. He's the better server in this matchup. He has more firepower. You could argue once again that there is going to be a case for an over in this matchup. Different styles a bit. I know Khachanov, when he's not spraying unforced errors, can be a decent rallier. But we know Khachanov shot selection can be pretty one-dimensional and can be pretty problematic at times. And Mickelson is pretty good at keeping the ball in play. So this whole matchup comes down to Khachanov's racket. If he can avoid the unforced errors, he should win comfortably. However, if he ends up spraying shots, he could lose outright. So it's going to be a bit tricky. Now, a reminder, we have Khachanov to win the event at around 30-1, so we'll see what happens there. I think Khachanov wins for this matchup. I'd go for the spread at minus 2.5. Mickelson, I think, has been good. I think you could argue that his serve is still not good enough to survive against better competition. And even though there was one lopsided matchup in Australia, I'm not going to overreact too much to it. Khachanov had a pretty weird season where he was underwhelming early, and then recently he's kind of settled back into a rhythm. It feels like he's starting to figure it out again, and I picked Khachanov to win the event because he tends to raise his level in these 1,000 events. I like the draw for him. I liked him to make the semis and beyond. Not going to really, I'd say, reinvent the wheel here. I think Khachanov wins. I'll go for the games. I'll go with the minus 2.5. I could consider maybe going in over in games. I think you could argue that Mickelson, once again, can frustrate Khachanov over the course of this matchup. Do I like the firepower for Mickelson? Not really. I think he has to improve on it. I think the serve is vulnerable, and I think Khachanov, despite not being a great returner, will have more chances to break than Mickelson will. Give me Khachanov in what I think will be a competitive matchup, but I think he eventually does cover the spread. Now, for the comments section, I see some questions here. If I do like the over on Papyr and team total, you're mentioning Rybakina. I have not really covered much of the women's. I know that Swiatek lost, and I know Rybakina won a marathon against, I think it was Jastrzemska yesterday. But either way, I know that Swiatek lost. That was the main news there for the women's side. I don't mind the team total over. I think I'd rather stay away from it, though, because I can see a world where Papyr does lose in straight sets. You need him to win a set, basically. I know you can get a 7-6, 7-6, but I don't mind it because I think he can win a set. But I see a world where Zverev wins in straight sets and it's close, and you still lose. So I think I'd rather go with the over or the spread, personally, when you're comparing the team total to the actual spread. A question from Rex, if I like the over in the first set. I don't hate it. You could argue maybe one of them gets off to a slow start, so that could be the one reason why you're against it. It should be plus money. I don't mind the value if you want to go for it. But I think I'm going to stay away from either of those. I think I'd consider the over, but I'll pass on that. I see Sports Fan mentioning he's going to go with Zverev money line with the over. I don't hate that at plus 160. I like the price if you want to go for a combo play. And I see Andrew giving a backhanded compliment to Fritz. He'll never beat Sinner and Alcaraz, but he's a king amongst the clowns. You're not wrong. That's kind of a great summary of Fritz. I feel like he's a guy who is definitely capable of winning a 1,000 event when the other main guys are not there. I think Fritz is a pretty good overall player, of course, being top 5, top 10 in the world. I wouldn't trust him to win a Grand Slam, but in a 1,000 event with no Alcaraz and Sinner, he's got a shot, and he was able to survive against Lehecka in the 3-set marathon yesterday. So I don't mind it. I'll get into Fritz's matchup in a second. I see Rex mentioning that Mickelson is better at the net. Definitely true. I've mentioned this many times for Khachanov. He is so one-dimensional behind the baseline. And he's never worked on his volley game at all. And that's one area I think he should work on. Maybe it's the Russians, because Rublev's the same way. I think Rublev should have worked on his volleying too. But Khachanov never comes forward. He'll stand behind the baseline. You could argue that does play into Mikkelsen's hands, but he has the firepower advantage. We'll see how that works out. I agree with you, though. I think Mikkelsen is an underrated volleyer. We saw that against Musetti when he started to come to the net more, and it completely changed the complexion of the entire matchup. I think that it's an interesting matchup in itself, but I'll go with Khachanov in this one. I might be biased, though, because we have him to win the event at around plus 3,000. Anyway, moving on to the next matchup, which will be taking place on... this is going to be taking place on Tuesday. For this one, you have Shelton against de Minaur. Now, de Minaur is minus 175. Shelton's about plus 150. For the spread, you have minus 2.5 for de Minaur at plus 110. You have minus 1.5 at around minus 125. For the actual Shelton side, you have plus 2.5 at minus 130. You have plus 1.5 at minus 105. For the over-under, I see 22.5 minus 160 on the over, or 23.5 minus 108 on the over. For the set spread, you have de Minaur in straight sets at plus 157. You have Shelton to win in straight sets at plus 313. The over 2.5 sets is around plus 125. Now, they've never faced off before, which might surprise you, but that is true. Never faced off. Now, de Minaur's in great form. He won the title in DC. Then he ended up winning against Comasagna in straight sets, had a walkover against O'Connell, and beat Tiafoe in 3. As for Shelton, he's been winning, but has not been overly dominant. Ended up losing to Fekina in whatever the hell that matchup was in the semis. Then he ended up beating Mannarino in straight sets, had a war against Nakashima, which he won in the final set breaker, and then he ended up beating Kaboli in, once again, a final set breaker. So we know Nakashima. He's good on hard court. Pretty similar player to Shelton, though, but he's a little bit worse. Big serve, not a great rallier, basically it. Kaboli's got firepower, but he's also a bit, I'd say, mentally fragile, and we saw that as Kaboli unraveled. Shelton's kind of fortunate to be here, because once again, Kaboli was up 5-3 in the third set and choked. de Minaur, though, has been, objectively speaking, the better player recently. And you could argue stylistically, it's a very interesting matchup because both guys are opposites. Shelton does not really like to rally. He can, but he's more of course, a big server who likes to showcase the firepower, end points somewhat quickly. de Minaur will run down every ball, will keep the ball in play, but the firepower is very unimpressive. So the argument is, which style will succeed in this matchup? Will Shelton overpower de Minaur, or will de Minaur's consistency and his rally tolerance eventually cause enough unforced errors from Shelton to win? I think it's a close matchup. I think it goes 3 sets. I think Shelton's serving will be, at least for one set, too much to handle, and I think that de Minaur's returning and his overall consistency will wear down Shelton over a set as well. So I like the over on this one. I think you're looking at what should be a fun matchup. I am going to go de Minaur to win it. I think that he's going to be able to survive, but if it went to a breaker, once again, in the third set, who would I take? I might take Shelton for that one. I think Shelton is a very good tiebreak player, and he's proven it. He has been very good in big moments and tiebreakers. The problem is he blows a bunch of break points en route to getting to the tiebreak, and we saw that in a couple of matches. I think Nakashima had a similar story there. A couple of break points he choked, but then eventually did win the breaker anyway. There's a chance that Shelton does win this match. I'm not going to write him off immediately. I think de Minaur is going to win. I think he's the better player, but I do think that Shelton will win a set here. Give me the over in this one. I think it'll be a pretty competitive matchup that might go down to a breaker, but I'll pick de Minaur. He's playing great tennis. We saw in the final game that he broke against Tiafoe. The court coverage is insane. He will force Shelton to hit the extra ball, and with Shelton's questionable shot selection, the extra ball might result in a couple of free points, and you can't give away free points against de Minaur. Give me de Minaur in this one. The problem is, I think the price makes sense, but 175 is kind of expensive. I'll go for the games there at minus 1.5, at minus 125. I think he wins. I think Shelton makes it close, but I am going to go with de Minaur minus the 1.5 games for this one. Don't mind the over, though. 23.5 is pretty, I'd say, accurate for me based on what the total should be. 22.5 is minus 160. If you could find a 23 as a flat game total, I like it. I'll go for the over in games, though. I'm picking 3 sets after all. Give me the over for the games on that one. Moving on to the next matchup, the final one for the quarters. Going to look at a matchup between Rublev and Fritz. Should be fun. Now, Fritz a massive favorite, about minus 200. You have Rublev at around plus 180, give or take. For the spread, minus 2.5 for Fritz, plus 2.5 for Rublev. The over-unders at 23.5 or 24.5. For the set spread, you have Fritz to win in straight sets at plus 136. You have Rublev to win in straight sets at around plus 360. And for the over 2.5 sets, I see around plus 125. Now, for the head-to-head, it has been close. They're currently 5-4 in favor of, I believe it was Fritz who was favored, or I'd say who was ahead in the head-to-head. But on hard court, Fritz is kind of dominated. So they faced off a couple of times. They faced off on clay last year. Rublev won. Clay again, 2023, Rublev won as well. So, hard court only. Fritz beat Rublev in 2023 in the Laver Cup in straight sets. Beat him in Cincinnati in 3 sets 2022. Ended up beating him in Indian Wells in straight sets. Beat him in Paris in straight sets as well. Lost in Dubai 2021, but he also lost in the Next Gen Finals in 2018. And Fritz did win Indian Wells in 2018 in straight sets. So ignoring the weird format of the Next Gen Finals and ignoring all the clay matches, Fritz has been very good against Rublev in the head-to-head on hard court, as Fritz has won a total of 4 straight hardcore matches that were regular format against Rublev. So you might expect Fritz to win. His serving was very good, as he did not get broken. However, Leheshka did have 9 breakpoint chances. Rublev, though, served very well against a great returner in Fekina, was not broken in the entire matchup. So both guys are serving quite well, and I think that can result in what could be another marathon featuring a breaker or two. I like the over in this one. I think Fritz makes sense being the favorite. Do I think it's too big of a number? I understand it. I would not want to lay $2 with him in this one. I think I'd rather go for Fritz at like minus 150, 160. $2, though, feels pretty expensive if I had to actually break it down. So I'm going to go with the over for this one. I think there'll be a breaker, so I don't mind the over half a tie break in this matchup. But I do think both players not getting broken in their last matches tells me the serve should be on solid, I'd say, display for this matchup. Fritz's return games can be very annoying because Fritz, we know, can set up breakpoint chances. He's not going to convert them, but he'll set up some chances. Rublev, though, did a pretty poor job early on converting chances against Fekina, who's not exactly the best server. Fritz, though, can serve very well. It's why Rublev's had a hard time beating him on hard court, because the return games for Rublev are not exactly impressive, I'll put it that way. So I see a bunch of holes in this one. Not going to predict a 7-6, 7-6, but I do think a 3-set war could be in the cards here. I like the over in the matchup. You might end up getting an over while it ending in straight sets. That wouldn't shock me either. Give me the over, though, for this one. I see the team totals. I see Fritz at around 13 at minus 130. I like that. I see Rublev at 12.5. Might be a good same-game parlay for the team total overs. Rublev has to win a set to go over his at 12.5. I think he'll win a set, but you might end up seeing Fritz win a pretty classic 7-6, 7-6, potentially. But I think I'll go with the over in this one. Give me Fritz team total over. I see Andrew mentioning 12.5. That's pretty juiced. I'll go with the 13 at minus 130 instead. Give me a close matchup that I think is going to be a good overall battle. I see Sportsfan mentioning the first set games at 10.5 at plus 175. Sportsfan, I'll ask you, which book did you find 175 on? Because I saw 150 as the best price. So I'll ask you, Sportsfan, I was looking at that market. What book did you find the 175 on? Because that's very intriguing for the 10.5 for the first set. I can see both players getting off the slow starts return-wise. Both guys serve well. Court speed's been pretty fast here in Toronto. I can see a tie break in the first set. That wouldn't shock me either. But Sportsfan, just let me know where you found that price at 175. That is pretty generous from what I saw. I saw a couple of books that had like 135, 140. 175, though, is a very good price, so I'd recommend taking that. But I am curious where you ended up finding that line. Anyway, it's going to wrap it up for the actual match breakdown. It's time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For that, though, reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Circa. They're still hosting 3 of the biggest football contests of the NFL season. That's Circa Million, that's Circa Survivor, and the Circa Rendismo. Over $200 million in guaranteed prizes. Cannot call yourself a 2D gen if you're not going to be competing in the contest. coming out with SGPN at Circa Contest Weekend from August 21st to 23rd for an amazing weekend, including live shows and open bars. Plus, you get 15% off your stay at Circa with the code SGP15. Contest open to everyone. Sign up in Nevada, play for anywhere with the help of SGPN's official proxy. To footballcontest.com, use code SGP, $50 off your proxy fees. We're also brought to you by Rhythm because they have power trends now, which have been dominating baseball and WNBA. So for the actual stats behind baseball power trends, the under batter props that they have are hitting around 70%. And a reminder, WNBA power trends since the All-Star break are 27 and 16 with an ROI of 23.36%. Download the app, though. Check out Power Trends. Start betting smarter. We have a free trial combo or link with Rhythm. Use the link. SportsCamp.com's Rhythm to get your 7-day free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. We're going through the matches for the quarters in Toronto. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. By the way, I see a question from Toad for the 12.5. Are you referring to the first set total or the team total, Toad? Because 12.5 games, you can refer to the first set totaled games or the actual player to win by himself over 12.5 games. So that's what the game totals can mean. Either you're talking about a first set or you're talking about the team total, which is the amount of games one player wins. That's what that means. So 12.5, what he's referring to, I think he means the team total for Fritz. I didn't see a 12.5. If I did, it was very juiced. I saw 13 or 13.5. We're talking about the team total that's under the player total games tab on DraftKings. That's what it's referring to. Speaking of team totals, though, that's going to segue. Once again, 12.5, that's he's talking about, I think, the Fritz team total over on his games. I think that's what he's referring to for that. But for my lock, I'm going to go with the team total. Going to be a guy that's been a friend of ours on the podcast recently. I'm going to the Dimmenauer match, taking on Shelton. Dimmenauer's been our guy. Shout out to him for winning the outright at 8-1 for us in DC. I will take him team total over the 12.5 games here at minus 150. If you want to go for the spread, I don't hate it, but there's a world where Dimmenauer loses the match and goes over the team total. This was on Bet365, which went rogue on the pricing. 150 does feel expensive. It's not. I saw 170 in some spots. So 365 kind of went rogue. I saw 13.5 games as the number on Caesars. So I do expect the line to move. I saw Bet Online offshore had 13 games at minus 110 or so. So you can go with that instead. I'll go 12.5, though, at minus 150. So Shelton, we know, is a bit of a long set magnet because his breaking skills are not very impressive and his serve is quite good. But there's been a 7-5 or a 7-6 set in 4 of his last 5 matches, and each of his last 2 matches also did not end in straight sets. So Shelton, we've seen him be involved in a couple of marathons recently against Nakashima and against Kaboli. And if you end up getting a breaker or 7-5, I do think Dimmenauer should win at least one set in this matchup. But if Dimmenauer ends up winning one close set, you're pretty much home free. Shelton is a pretty bad returner, and I think that Dimmenauer with his rally game should frustrate Shelton into enough mistakes, kind of like what Fekina did in the semis in DC last week. But once again, I do think you're looking at a good spot for Dimmenauer to either win or lose, but to still win enough games to go over this number. Give me Dimmenauer team total over 12.5 at minus 150 as my lock. It's available on Bet365. For the dog, I'm going to go to the play actually recommended by SportsFan. He ended up mentioning 175 offshore. He mentioned 150 on Bet365. That was actually my play. I'm going to go with the Fritz and Rublev first set over 10.5 games at plus 150. I won with the same strategy in the Opelka matchup in the last episode. I'll run it back in this one. We saw Fritz's poor returning skills against Leheshka in the last round. We saw Rublev have poor return skills as well against Fekina, as the first 2 sets went to breakers there as well. Neither guy, though, got broken in the entire match last round. And you're looking at both guys having a decent amount of long first sets. 3 of Fritz's last 4 matches have had at least 12 games in the first set. Same with Rublev, the exact same stat. So both guys have been really poor at breaking early in matches while serving pretty well, and both guys should serve well, in my opinion, for the early stage of this matchup. But 4 of the 6 head-to-head meetings have also been close in the first set. 4 of the last 6 head-to-head meetings have had at least 12 games in the first set. So once again, this prop is cashed in 4 of the last 6 meetings, and on top of that, you have seen a bunch of long first sets with these 2 guys individually recently. And 150 is a great price for two guys who did not get broken in the last round. Give me a bunch of holds, give me no breaks, and give me the over for the first set. And I like the price here, 150. I'll take that as my dog for the show. So once again, the plays here for the lock and dog for the quarters in Toronto. The lock's going to be on Debonair. Team total over 12.5 games, minus 150 on Bet365. For the dog, also Bet365. Give me the first set over 10.5 games in the Fritz match at plus 150. It's going to wrap it up for the show. We're back once again for the semis in Toronto. Till next time, I'm on Twitter or Radio. Good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.